This mistake costs builders over 100K each individually in lost profits. So make sure you do not make this mistake. One of our members thought he was profitable until he learned how to read his numbers profitably and actually discovered that he was losing money on most of his projects. And one of the root causes is confusing markup with margin, not understanding the golden ratios, and pricing to win work instead of pricing to a target margin to make the right profit. I can't get 20% margins in my market. Yes, you can. Our members are out there getting 25% plus margins in a competitive market. And it's not about the market. It's about your positioning, your systems, and your confidence that you portray to the buyer and to the prospects that you can deliver on what you say you can. Welcome to the Builder's Ladder. Today we're covering episode number 4 of an 8-part series where I'm covering the biggest takeaways from my new book, The Profitable Builder's Playbook. Over half the businesses we see have their profit and loss set up incorrectly, which means that they're making decisions based on false information. One of our members, Luke, thought he was profitable until he learned how to read his numbers profitably and actually discovered that he was losing money on most of his projects. The difference between markup and margin is costing builders hundreds of thousands of dollars in their business. And if you don't get this right, it can be massively detrimental. So chapter 4 is all about knowing the numbers that drive your business to give you better cash flow and greater profitability. So the problem is builders avoid their numbers because they're scary, but numbers tell us the truth about what's working and what's not working. So one of our members was doing $1.5 million when he came to us, working 80 hours a week, barely making any profit, and didn't know his actual hourly rate. And the cost of this is that he's actually working for less than minimum wage whilst taking on all the risk and liability of owning his company. And one of the root causes is confusing markup with margin, not understanding the golden ratios, and pricing to win work instead of pricing to a target margin to make the right profit. And today, I'm going to show you the exact numbers to track and how they guide every profitable decision in your business that's going to lead to more cash flow, more profit, and ultimately more money in your bank and less stress. So step 1, how to set up your profit and loss correctly. Let's go through what each of these terms mean. So revenue, that's your top line. That's the total money coming into the business, and it's the cost to the client. Next, we've got your cost of sales, quite often referred to as cost of goods sold or variable costs. So these are the direct job costs, labor, material, subcontractors that it costs you. Next, when we take away cost of sales from your revenue, we've got your gross profit, and that's revenue minus the cost of sales, and that funds everything else like your overheads and your net profit. Next, we've got your overheads, and these are the fixed costs to run your business and should include your salary. And typically this should be 8 to 12% of your revenue. And then lastly, we've got net profit, what's left over, your bonus as the business owner, and this should be 10 to 15% of the total revenue. All right, step 2, we want to work out what are the golden ratios. These are your success benchmarks to work with as a residential building company owner or a general contractor to make sure that you get the right profit for your business and you get paid what you're worth. So first is your gross profit. We need a minimum of at least 20 to 25% plus. This is non-negotiable. Do not break this rule. Get better at marketing, get better at controlling the projects, better at controlling your work in progress so that you hit or exceed the gross profit that you price the job at. Next, we've got overheads. These need to be 8 to 12%, including your market rate salary. So if you're doing a project manager role and that's 150K, then we want to include that in the overheads. Lastly, net profit. And this should be 10 to 15% of the revenue, and it's the minimum that you should be getting for taking all the risk of taking on the business, employees, health and safety, tax, etc. Why is the 20% gross minimum key? Well, anything less makes it impossible to run a real business with the right people, be able to attract people, build proper systems, and actually build a business that gives you both more money and more time rather than just a busy job with overheads and feeling like you're trapped on the builder's hamster wheel. Step 3, markup versus margin. This affects 90% of building company owners that come to us. So markup, that's the percentage added to your costs. So 20% markup on $800K worth of costs means you'll have a $960,000 sale price. Margin is the percentage of sale price that's profit. So 160 plus 960 equals 16.7%. So markup equals the percentage added onto your costs. Margin is a percentage of the sale price that is the profit. So a simple way to work this out is if we have cost of goods sold of $800,000, a sale price of $1 million, the piece in the middle is your gross profit. So $200,000. Markup equals the 200,000 divided by the cost to use. So 200 divided by 800 gives us 25%. The margin is the 200,000 divided by the sale price to the client of $1 million, which is only 20%. So we can see in this example, if you confuse the two, you have a 25% markup, but only a 20% margin. And quite often the shock happens when you have a 20% markup, it actually only comes out at a 16.7% margin. So this is where a lot of people are going wrong, and it has a massive impact on your profit, your cash flow, the number of projects that you need to do to hit your target margin, and to actually make sure that you've got enough money to cover all your bills and make a decent living. So the correct formula to get a 20% margin, you need at least a 25% markup. And this mistake costs builders over $100K each individually in lost profits. So make sure you do not make this mistake. All right, so the 4 levers profit calculator is a calculator that you can use to see which levers should you pull to massively increase your profits. So lever number 1 is to increase your average job size. If you've got fewer jobs, if you want to get to a target revenue of $5 million and you're doing 250K jobs, you'll need to do 20 jobs. If you can increase that to 500,000, you'll now only actually need to do 10 projects. So same revenue, but less quoting, less scheduling, less sales, less client liaison, and less headaches. Next is to improve your conversion rate. So on that $5 million, if we only had a 20% conversion rate and we go to a 33% conversion rate, you're going to have to do significantly less pricing and less sales to make the same amount of revenue. Next, raise your gross margin. So better pricing, better cost control the work in progress is going to make a massive difference on how many projects you actually need to do versus having a lower gross margin. Next is to reduce your overheads. So improve your systems, efficiency, and productivity in the business as a whole. So small improvements in each lever equals massive profit increases because we're multiplying, not adding. So enter your numbers into the profit calculator. It's going to be a game changer, and it's going to highlight which area is going to make the biggest difference and give you the biggest bang for your buck for your effort. All right, so next we want to reverse engineer what does success look like. So step 5 is we're going to reverse engineer your goals. So let's start with your desired net profit. What sort of lifestyle do you want to live, and how much is that going to cost? So let's say in this example, you'd like $500,000 profit to run your ideal lifestyle. Next, we're going to add in your overheads. What are your fixed costs, including your salary? So let's say they were $600,000. We add those two together. Now we've got $1.1 million required gross profit. So we've added those two together, and now all we need to do is divide our total. So that's 1.1 million divided by your gross margin of 22% means that we need to do $5 million in revenue to ensure that we hit our profit target. If you reverse engineer your business like this, at least you know exactly what you need to do to cover your overheads and make your desired profit. And then we can work out from there, how many projects do you need, at what margin, at what average dollar sale, and then how many leads do we need each month? Because marketing and business is math. Numbers are too complicated, I just want to build. The reality is, numbers are the language of business. Ignore them at your peril and go broke. So they tell us what's working well and what do we need to work on. And your whole role as a business owner is to solve the number one constraint in your business. And once we topple that domino, it's going to set a chain of events, and it's going to make sure that you're in momentum and you're improving your profitability. So the solution is to start tracking your gross margin every month, One number that tells the whole story of how profitable and how productive and how effective and efficient the business is. This 15 minutes that you set aside every month reviewing your numbers, both per project and as a company, is going to identify where the holes are and what we should focus on. And it's going to make a massive difference to your business, your sanity, your clarity, your confidence, and last but not least, your cash flow. I can't get 20% margins in my market. Yes, you can. Our members are out there getting 25% plus margins in a competitive market. And it's not about the market. It's about your positioning, your systems, and your confidence that you portray to the buyer and to the prospects that you can deliver on what you say you can. And the key is to get booked out 6 to 12 months so you don't have stress. And if that's at 18%, fantastic. And then we're going to price the next jobs at 20%. Land those, get booked out at 20%, and then raise it to 22%. And by this way, we improve our pricing, improve our cash flow, and make sure that we lay a solid foundation for the business, because clients pay us for value, not the lowest price. So we want to make sure that we control your work in progress, we back cost in real time, so that you know exactly where you're at on each project and what to improve to make more profit, better cash flow, and actually be able to buy back your time. So I've got some tips for you that you can put into place straight away. So the first thing, pull out your last month's 12 months profit and loss, and let's calculate your actual gross margin per project and as a whole. So the formula is revenue minus cost of sales is going to give us your gross profit. Gross profit divided by revenue times 100 equals your gross margin percentage. So this week, identify which lever has the biggest opportunity for you. Of those 4 levers, is it job size, average dollar size, conversion, margin or overheads? And then let's put in place a couple of strategies to work on improving that one area. And most people discover that they're working for $30 to $50 an hour, and then they can see a clear path to $100+ per hour. So set some target margins for your next quarter, and let's start tracking that every month, because what you measure gets managed and what gets managed gets improved. So to wrap up, some key takeaways: numbers don't lie. They show exactly where your profit leaks are. A 20% plus gross margin minimum is non-negotiable to run a sustainable business. Small improvements in the 4 levers are going to create exponential profit growth, because remember, we're multiplying, not adding. And so the big transformation that I would like for you is to go from guessing and hoping to knowing and controlling your financial destiny. This is chapter 4 of the Profitable Builders Playbook. Get your free copy. All you need to do is cover the shipping. The link is in the show notes and includes $3,000 worth of bonuses, 4 levers calculator, resources, a masterclass, and a one-on-one game plan call. Master your numbers now.